think we're ready. I think we're ready. Yeah, I think we're ready here. Can I? How about if I just do that?
Here, we can do more passing.
Yeah, you can pass.
Hold on, I'm trying to get you in the picture too, I think.
Lovely. I don't want to.
All right, everybody look at Stacy and George. There you go. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just pass. You just can keep running them down and
Until they
bring
get
it
through
from the empties. Yeah, there you go.
They aren't even
Take that one. Here we go.
Sorry.
Yeah, you can pass it that way. Pass those up. Pass the empties up and pass the full ones down. There we go. Just like third grade.
In a long time since any of us were in third grade. A really long time.
Yeah, you guys pass it down. Pass it down.
No, but I'm kind of here.
Pass it down. Please pass up the empties. Yeah, there you go. And then there's salad dressing in the little pitcher.
Here you go. Picture.
And there's a couple of pictures on the table. Oh, you're welcome. Anybody else? Well, you guys for saving the world. Thank you.
So are you.
That's right.
We're all in it together.
Okay.
Salad dressing. Who's missing salad dressing?
Dressing.
I know Jonathan, he's going to be here at 7 o'clock.
Say it again?
Jonathan's going to
Oh,
be
great.
here at 7.
Well, George, how much of this is grown on the farm?
We have some lettuces, but we're largely past the season for us. Yeah, the last week or two. It's gotten kind of dark and cold out there.
Imagine that.
And although the greenhouses protect pretty well, but because the sun is not very strong or out very much, the plants don't grow. So they kind of go into dormancy, which is great, and you can harvest that, but you don't get very much yield, and there's no like follow through. So you it's like cut it once at this time of year or in early November, and then you're kind of done. We are still planting seeds for next spring, so that those seeds will survive in the greenhouse, and then have about a 1 month jump start come March. So it's interesting that they survive in sort of a sprouted form in the soil over the winter. So the two polytunnels is where we do most of the production work, and then the propagation glass greenhouse is warmer by a lot. It's just tighter, much better R values.
Can that produce?
It's a place where we start things more than we produce because of the scale of it. When 300 or 400 people come to the restaurant over the course of a weekend at this time of year, it turns out that that's actually a lot of food. So, so those stories are, and not to belabor the point, but I think that it is an enormously important issue for us as conservationists of how do we grow food in a way that doesn't just wreck the planet. Food in all of its iterations uses more land, more water, more pesticides, more energy, and more packaging than any other single human endeavor. So it's having more impact on the wildlife than anything else that we do. And it is my view that we need to start to imagine a more ecological agriculture where our farms are part of the solution rather than being part of the problem. How we actually get from where we are to there, I think, is still an unanswered question of, how do we truly feed 8 billion people and in ways that's responsible to the ecology of the planet is, I think, one of the central challenges of our moment.
I guess the thing that strikes me is that as a goal, Vermont, I think, is striving to grow enough food to feed Vermonters. How does Vermont grow vegetables through the winter in a sustainable way?
Well, I think that it's enormously challenging and that there is what sometimes is referred to as industrial organic and large scale. And I was just speaking with one of our gardeners and how much plastic organic agriculture uses very often as a weed suppressor, ground cover. So that is an issue. I think ultimately that part of the solution is reimagining our diets and thinking that, well, maybe it's inappropriate to have a salad green in January, but that maybe we have like a cured or pickled cabbage or something. But that kind of change is really hard because we've all kind of gotten used to having most anything that we want whenever we want. And there's an author that's written a book entitled Abundant Earth, Eileen Christ, and she really attributes a lot of the ecological challenges to what she called human entitlement, that we have this idea of supremacy on the planet and that we have the authority and the right to do anything that we want. And if that means having salad in January, if it means flying off to some tropical paradise in the middle of the winter, and the list kind of, the problem is the list goes on and on. And I say that with some reservation because I am that problem. My life and my livelihood is in conflict with our essential ecology. So I take full ownership of everything that I complain about.
And George, I'm thinking that it's also, these issues are so complex, it's really not clear what to do.
Agreed.
And I mean, I was surprised to hear, we had a meeting here. Remember Andrew Balford?
Yeah.
So he's one of the most distinguished conservation scholars in the world, Cambridge University. And he developed this concept called land sparing and land sharing. And so land sharing, when it is about agriculture, is about growing organically, regenerative agriculture. What you do here, George. Farming for biodiversity support. And land sparing is much more intensive agriculture, not irresponsible agriculture, but minimizing runoff, minimizing pesticides, but at a large scale. So it's more efficient and can feed more people. It's that those farms produce much more food and therefore put much less pressure on deforestation. So it's kind of like we need to think about these issues almost globally now. Because, you can apply it to logging in Vermont. If we kind of say no more logging, that means we're importing more logs, and where are they going to come from? Likely the Amazon or someplace like that. So I guess the ecologists call that concept kind of leakage. But it's just so hard to know what's right to do sometimes.
Okay, guys.
Here we go. I'm gonna move yours.
I know we can be here.
You want me to try to start this?
Let me find out.
Okay. I can't.
With that, I just want to say one. I say thank you to George again.
Yes, I saw it. Thank you.
So before I start writing a meeting here, I'd like everybody to introduce themselves first, so we know exactly who we're talking to, where they're coming from. And then when the last person finish, I'll pick up a few things, explain a few things for tonight and how we can move on. So I am Bruno Grimaldi, and Wastefield is the one who's supposed to host you tonight, so this is what I'm taking the lead.
Nice.
My role within the Wastefield Conservation Commission is I'm the treasurer for that. That's my function. On my left is,
Hi, Jocelyn. And I'm just a member. Just a member.
which member? Which conservation?
Oh, Wakefield.
Of course.
Was there another one? No.
Carolyn Skipa, Warren Conservation Commission.
Kim Phelan, Basin Conservation Commission, and I think I've kind of taken over secretary duties.
George Shank with the Warren Conservation Commission.
I'm Woody Dugan with the Facein Conservation Commission, and a large focus is spent on Boyce Hill Town Forest.
Andrea Henderson, Basin Conservation Commission, and I am our treasurer.
Kurt Lindbergh from Wakefield Conservation Commission, and I'm chair of the group.
Pete Hogan with Basin Conservation Commission, and Woody was not quite clear. We both agreed to join the Basin Conservation Commission transition road management plan for Boyce Hill, and we were going to limit our efforts to Boyce Hill.
Sorry.
Yeah. And we call that leakage.
Our predecessor said that's all we'd have to do.
Kay Water with the Warren Conservation.
Jim Edgecombe with the Warren Conservation Commission.
Neil Coleman, Warren.
Brian Lippman's Basin Conservation.
Amy Dalton, Basin.
Great, thank you, everybody. So a couple of things tonight. Unfortunately, I have to show my age. Oh, no, you like
Young people wear glasses too.
Yeah, I gotta be a thanks. So, as I said, I'll facilitate a meeting, then a couple of things that I'd like to do tonight. One is, I don't know if anybody else likes to add something to the agenda, but if time permits, I would ask anybody else to do so. One. Two is, I was just talking today with Kurt, and we were just, thinking, what are the benefits having these meetings? So last time we met was like a year ago. We're trying to do it every 6 months, but it seems to be challenging. But ultimately, if we step back and see, we've been getting together for the last 5-6 years. What we came out of this is, one is the conservation and recreation vision. So that was one thing that we was generated by it, and I think we see some benefits and some synergies for us as a valley. The other thing that we saw coming out of it was the indigenous species, which we all start working together. So this is where are the benefits while we try to get together here. So sharing idea and understand what we can do. The other thing that I think what I want to say is on the agenda, I again mentioned that let's talk about their conservation, reservation vision, recreation vision, but ultimately we have a dedicated half an hour at the end that we can talk about it. But the ultimate things what we hoping to do is for you guys to share what transpired for the last years within your conservation commissions. What are the things that were pressing for you? What are you working on? And then ultimately with the idea of, hey, how can we partner? What can we do together? So we all live in one valley. We all love the valley. The border is just a line. So let's make sure that we work at one synergies and see how can we expand this. So with that said, before I turn over to anybody else, I'd like to turn over to our chair to see if he has any comments for us tonight.
Just that I look forward to these events, because I just love learning more what's going on, because there's more going on than I ever know. So there's lots of learning that's possible and happens each time. So.
Excellent. So Warren, who's the lucky one, number one for us on the stage.
So I have something I was going to share, like if I can share it on the projector. And I think most people sort of have an idea of what's happening with the knotweed. And that's a fully dry town vision now, and with Kurt and Andrea, we have combined complete resources and are doing, I think an amazing job. I mean, a lot of people look to what we've done
That's vegetarian.
and are taking really, I think it's quite amazing. Last year, we had 2 events where the events were focused on our activities. And it was organized by the Trust for Public Land. And we had, I think it was like 15 or 20 states there, and any people that was in all the invasives, and it was like really impressive how they were recognizing that we had accomplished something that they hadn't seen anywhere else before. And the accomplishment was sort of the amount of community engagement we had on the invasive problem. Less so on, the fact that we have techniques that work or, struggle or whatever, but mostly the fact that we had the coming together of the entire community, actually the entire watershed, on a particular problem, which is seen by many people as the most prominent invasive. I mean, of all the invasives now, knotweed is always now number 1. And so that, the others are important, but it's certainly a very big one. I don't know that there's this actually.
Do you think that's gonna work? James?
Oh, is there a share thing? Can you,
It was.
did you see?
Him through mine. Let's see.
No, a share thing. I can just hand you mine. So like crazy. But the presentation I was going to make was specifically on the work that Warren has done with Arrowwood that goes a couple of steps beyond what CRV has done.
Where's this?
Where is this? Go on stick.
Or do you need to put that into something else?
No, I think I need to get this to share, so it's on this port. The question is, how do we? That looked good.
You want to email it to me? I can put it up.
This reminds me of COVID. You're on mute.
Yes.
Whenever all
I'll
the tech
email
problems.
it.
Try doing that
It was
with
right there.
13-year-olds.
But it's like,
6 classes a day of 13-year-olds.
While you're getting that
Yeah.
ready, do you want me to talk about the land acquisitions?
yes,
And then you-
Sure.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh, you got it, he's got it.
Just make it bigger.
bigger. Make it bigger. Make it bigger.
Yeah, up here to the right.
This one. All right. So I wanted to start with this map. So that's sort of the best map we currently have of habitat and corridors. And it's something you can't get from the CRV mapping thing. And so this was work between Jen Tilke, Arrowwood, and us to sort of say, where the hell are the corridors? And so we have this map, and as people may already know, that the new Warren zoning actually has language in it that in certain districts, in the more rural districts, the 5-acre and the 25-acre districts, you have to develop the lot with no undue harm to wildlife habitats and corridors, which is one of the first of the states to be able to put that in the zoning. But to implement that, you've got to have really good maps, because you can't say, oh, your property here, you can't divide it that way because this is a corridor and stuff. So these maps are becoming more and more critical to our ability to really exercise how the zoning is being done. And this is good, but it's not good enough. And so we started a program with Arrowwood to try to refine this whole process. And with their leadership, we started sort of at a mesoscale. Instead of like looking at the individual thing and then trying to go out, we started to go at the big scale and go down. And so we took what we thought were habitat blocks, what we thought of as habitat blocks as residents, And we said, okay, those are the habitat blocks. Do they share any particular set of conditions that may allow us to think about them differently? So Arrowwood then took those and we started using the same tools that are within the CRV, the Arrowwood CRV tool, to sort of say, okay, what are the critical conditions by which habitat will be determined? And trying to highlight those and prioritize those and weight those so that when we get the general final heat map of an area, we go like, well, that's a really important thing because of these set of characteristics. And so in the first pass, this is just the mass stands. This is just some of the important stuff that you would worry about. But as we got into that, they sort of generated a general heat map of this as well. This is the development. So obviously that's not what we're going to be able to constrain. So let's not worry about those areas. And then this became the heat map was on a bigger scale, but really was really looking at the way we characterize conditions. So like this condition is graded here and this condition is graded here and the mix. And I'm not totally satisfied with that map yet in terms of that it actually is doing the right thing. So we've engaged Arrowwood in another set of contracts to sort of truth this out. So I can take a place in this map that I say, I know this is absolutely amazing. Why is this map not as good as I know it is? And we've had Arrowwood do the actual research. When I say this is an amazing habitat, it's completely researched. We know it's absolutely fabulous habitat. And this map should show that. And it isn't yet crisp enough to say that is that good. So this is where we're going to sort of do truthing of the actual evaluation system that Arrowwood created. And it's going to be like piece by piece. Why is this not as good as it? What value should we have accentuated, or not accentuated? And I've come up with a couple of my own values that are not in the CRV process that should be important because they really do define habitat. And one of them is access. You can have a big block of land, a forest, but you might have access all over that. And then you might have a big block of forest that actually has no access. And because it has no access, it means it's really much better wildlife habitat. Even though the other grades aren't as important.
You're saying human access.
Yeah.
Have
Roads.
human accessibility.
So there's places in Warren that because of the way Warren is done, there's very hard to get there. So that actually has great habitat value, and that's not one of the values within the CRV process. So anyway, we're going to and this is just the starting. We think it's going to take us a year working with Arrowwood to sort of refine this whole thing. And the goal is to actually make that first map I showed you just a lot better, a lot more defensible, and a lot crisper, so that we actually can start really pushing that right into the zoning thing. So anyway.
What was the rationale to go from micro to macro?
At the macro level, like you take these macros, we sort of know that this area is the same. In general, from a habitat point of view, the animals are very likely to be in the same sort of concentrations, and they're not going to be here. And to a certain extent, the vegetation and the conditions are somewhat similar in that. Now, this was just us throwing it up there as an idea and asking Arrowwood what they thought about it. And I'm not so sure it actually is going to plan out that way, but it was a way of pushing on them to think harder.
What's interesting is that they kept the blocks that we had outlined and worked with those. But I think it's like outlining those blocks in your town is really the first step, and describing that process itself.
So how
How
did
do you
you
define that?
how did you outline the blocks? Was it just looking at your map and looking at the wildlife corridors that were there and then saying these tend to be neighborhood groupings or these are similar? How did you do that?
I'm trying to get to the original map that we sat around and drew. We took a map and just took a magic
Pens
marker.
on
We
it.
took markers and marked up the town. And,
Yeah.
and it was based on our personal knowledge of what's on the
Yeah,
land.
there's the fact, that's what we did. We just drew this.
Okay, so it was
There it is.
Genius.
But
And then we-
our personal knowledge was also informed by the last 15 years of Airwood data that we have
Yeah.
been looking at forever. Like, it
Yeah, so-
wasn't just
so-
all
so-
from our gut.
So there's the blocks, and then this is a list of the variables and what was in CRV, what's not in CRV, what was critical in CRV. So those are all these values are the CRV actually was a duplicate process to a process that Airwood created for us. So we're all collectively building on this tool, which is way beyond the tool that is being used at the state level. Jens Hilke is like, this is really out there. This is really pushing the edge of what's happening.
So Ito, the top gas, that's probably a good example of, it's just been left alone pretty much, right?
Right.
So has Arrowwood been studying, like if there's more, because I know they use cameras to,
So let's go back to this one.
and I just wonder if there's been like a real upswing in animal life because there's no humans there.
Well, so Top Gas, this parcel right here, I don't know, I get too much detail, but this is the parcel that we have studied the most. This is the best habitat in the town of Warren. And it has no roads through it. So I draw a less line around there. There are no roads that go into that penetrate this any depth. And, we paid, it was 3 years of study from Arrowwood, which included walking it and cameras and everything. And we have that full report's available. It's online. It's on our website. And it is really a remarkable piece of property from a habitat point of view. And obviously it's habitat. Obviously the corridors go in and out of there. And so mapping the corridors in and out of there is critical because the animals can't use that habitat unless they can get in and out easily. And so a lot of that attention.
Whose property is it?
It's partly town and it mostly private. And the landowners, we have talked to the landowners, they know what it is. We're trying to explain it to them. And a lot of them are very appreciative of what they have, and they're not interested in actually doing too much more. That'll change over time, but this is where the new zoning comes in. If we can say this is critical habitat and you really can't disturb this, then that can stop people from doing stuff. And one fight early on we had to defend this was with the pass. The pass was adamant that they wanted to go through this property with a set of trails. And we said, no, you just can't do that. That's not what this should be saved for. You need to put your trail somewhere else. And they did back down eventually.
If I could
Because the bridge was gonna be like
Yeah.
$1
briefly say that one of the qualities of the Top Gas property is that it goes down to the river, or to the Mad River. And so we've done a pretty good job of conserving high elevation land here in the valley and in Vermont. And we've done a relatively poor job of conserving low elevation land. Low elevation land is biologically more productive than high elevation land. They're different species, but in total, the productivity of low elevation land tends to be far richer. And so that's part of the uniqueness of this particular parcel, is that it's this gradation from some of the lowest elevation in Warren to a central plateau. And then, one of the goals, of course, then is making these connections between low elevation to high elevation so that there are corridors or passageways for wildlife to move across and to access the resources in these corridors. The corridors are not simply roadways or pathways. They are also habitat themselves.
So, I'm just trying to keep track of
Yeah, yeah.
time. So I know, what is the punchline here? It's like, you're trying to,
The punchline is that we are going to continue pushing this boundary, and we want to share this widely because for the CRV to go to the next steps that they need to do, at least from a habitat evaluation point of view, they're gonna need tools like this. And so the fact that we are gonna push, we can be a little bit of a leader in saying, this is how you might wanna think about it in your territories. Because we're not yet as a valley completely at the same level in terms of knowledge.
And this is how much it'll cost.
Yeah.
And how much has this cost?
You know, the last 2 years we spent maybe $3,000. It's really inexpensive, partly due to the fact that Arrowwood is so up to speed. And this tool now, because it's CRV tools, it's all, everybody's using things, they don't have to invent the tool. It's like exercising the tool. You got 15 categories of things. Those are pretty much, those are the things. The question is, how do you make those sing in terms of defining characters? So this is a little bit of a, so we're sitting down in a couple weeks with them and just say, okay, that's what we want to do. How do we make this do this? And they're going to have the computer. So turn that one up, turn this one down, do this. Show me how you can make this look like this.
You know, would Arrowwood or folks from your conservation commission be in a position to kind of look at for Facein and Waitsfield to kind of come up to the level of detail you have, so we have a more comprehensive look at the valley? Could you make some recommendations to us on what we ought to consider doing?
I think with the new tool, Arrowwood tool, the thing you don't have is you don't have any truthing. So what we did is we paid for Arrowwood to do corridor surveys. First of all, we said, here are the corridors. Okay, go prove that's true. And we paid Arrowwood to go out there, walk up and down and run cameras, and they validated. So now we know that that's truth. It's like, that's true. Because you know, it's from a biological point of view, you get to defining a corridor because you know the terrain and you know the vegetation, and you say that's probably where they're going to be. But once you can truth it, now you've got really a defensible thing, and that's the place to go. But even in Waitsfield and Facein, we can sit down, people like this around the table, and we can draw a map, and I bet we can get most of the corridors because we all have been out there enough to say, like, this is where they are, and we do have, the iNaturalist Mad River Valley Wildlife Observation Project, which has some like 600 data points on it.
So you say that, I'm just trying to make sure you stay focused. So you say it costs $3,000 to do this, but how much money so far as Warren, as a town, has spent towards Arrowwood in general?
15 grand.
15 grand. Okay, great.
Maybe a little more, but that's not.
So I know that somebody else wanted to talk about land, did something else with Warren, so we can wrap it up with Warren. You're already over time. A couple minutes.
So the definition of corridors consistent throughout the entire valley, or do they vary? And should we be widening? We've talked about this.
We sort of approach corridors with a broad brush.
Mhm.
The animal isn't going to walk just in this little line.
Right,
It's an area.
In a feeding area.
Well, or where it's easy to walk, but what can define a corridor very rigidly, roads and very severe terrain. When you get certain terrain where animals are not going to easily go through that, they'll get pushed into a certain area where they're going to walk here, not over there. And so I don't think there's a general definition. I mean, I think I rely on Arrowwood's vision of what that definition might be.
Arrowwood's vision, as I understood it, we just heard from them, was more about the lack of barriers. It wasn't so much, this is beautiful habitat for, there's no culverts, there's no roads, there's no steep grades, there's no riprap.
Perfect.
So George is 100% right. Both Warren and Vermont has done a lot of high elevation conservation and not enough lower elevation conservation for low to high connectivity. But conservation is also about opportunity. So we did have 2 successes this year in Warren. We completed a 52-acre addition to Roxbury State Forest, which was a donation of $400,000 worth of value from a Leesfield family. And the town put in, I think, 57 for some title clearing stuff. And so that was added to Roxbury State Forest right on Roxbury Gap on the south side of the road.
Top of the gap.
Top of the gap. So that's now the first Roxbury State Forest parcel in Warren. And now we're working on the second. It is about 2 days away from being under purchase and sale contract. But Leonard Robinson's parcel, 75 acres, down the ridgeline a bit, but kind of above Blueberry Lake, along the Roxbury-Warren boundary at the top of Mad Meadows Road. That it will be conserved with Housing and Conservation Board funds and town Warren funds and possibly some private funds. So appraisal's been done and we're working on that, and that will also be owned by the state as an addition to Roxbury State Forest. And then we're exploring an opportunity with a third landowner a little bit south of there along that. And then that ties into some coalition work that we are having with some of our neighbors over in Northfield and Moortown on a focused effort for greater land protection in the Northfield Range. There is a lot of land protection over on the west side of our valley and really not a lot on the east side of our valley. So we are trying to prioritize, get people excited, and really start tackling some of the larger conservation opportunities in the Northfield Range over the next 20 years.
Excellent.
Hoorah.
Thank you, Warren.
So are you using these maps to show people that their land is super value? And yes, could you put this into conservation?
Yeah, I mean, they're all up on, well, some of them are up on the Warrentown website. And there has been kind of efforts to connect with some landowners.
Yeah, we try to regularly publish what we do for that purpose. And we find that if we just put it online, nobody knows it's there. So we have to go through a real process of making it an event. So you can get sort of coverage on the newspaper. And so you have to wait for some critical moments where you have something newsworthy to say to get people to actually go to the map. But one thing we have agreed to do, and the town is supporting this, is actually a packet of information to new landowners that they would get, that would refer them to all this information. So they're new in town, they need to know this. They get a letter and they get all these connections to all the websites that has all this data. So we're pretty far along with that, and the town is very supportive so that they will help us do that. And we're now planning to go to the realtors, say you really ought to have this. And people are looking at these properties, you ought to have access to this data.
That's a great point.
And there's a brand new resource coming out from Vermont Natural Resources Council in the next month. Basically a really comprehensive document for new landowners in Vermont. It's geared towards larger landowners, but kind of not only conservation opportunities, but everything about connecting to the county forester and management techniques for making your property more beneficial for wildlife and whatnot. So I will make sure to send a link around to the NRC's website when it gets posted, because it's a great thing to share with new people in the valley.
That's the one that I know we mentioned about the Bear Initiative putting all their information on that for new landowners.
Yeah.
So they can follow that
Hi, Rocky.
also.
I don't want to go out of order here, so.
Great.
Mhm.
Perfect. Thank you, Warren. Appreciate you update. Facein next. So we support Facein, and we appreciate the discussion. This is great because it's really good. That's what we're trying to achieve. Thank you. Exactly.
When we have,
So, you've seen it now a few times and I don't want to blow this thing off because it gets really seems to get pretty hot. But we did share here our latest newsletter. I was sharing a little earlier, that started a couple of years ago, and it, as you're saying, sharing information to new homeowners. And that you just mentioned, we did just have a Mad River Valley Bear Initiative 2-hour in-person session. And one thing that came out from, maybe it was that Friends, I'm not sure who did it, but Luke shared it with us, that there were the extensive welcome packets that went to people with 30 acres or more, maybe with the type of information that you're talking about, like specifically for Warren, but it seemed it was a broader watershed type effort. Anyways, that's something we, I think like to address as a broader organization, but in Facein.
Could you share that with us?
Yeah, as soon as Luke shares it with us, we'll share it with all of you. And from some years ago, so maybe someone here who's been on conservation for a while.
Was it the sap bucket?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so we did that maybe 12, 15 years ago. And then they were all just sitting there.
And was it Warren or Friends?
It was the whole valley. It was Forest Wildlife and Communities. So it was kind of a coalition among some of the conservation groups of DNRC and the conservation commissions, but it was the whole valley.
Well, I think something to consider reviving on a valley-wide basis. But to your point, you have this documentation already really very well done. We are working on it. Brian is heading this up with Arrowwood. We had ARPA funds that were allocated to a wildlife crossings study in Facein. So that is underway. I think should be done pretty soon, not to the level of detail that Warren has at this point, but with what we're learning from you, I think we can dive deeper into that as well.
Thank you, George, and everyone else. I'm afraid I have to run.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy skiing.
So that's one of the things we've been working on. Do you want to talk to this, Brian?
Yeah, I'll talk to this just a little bit. So this just came into our hands from Arrowwood basically late last week. So this is brand new for us. But Aaron is finishing up his contract for us to look at connectivity issues in Facein. You can just zoom in just a little bit and
More?
well, it's just a little bit hard, but if you notice a little tinting here and through, we'll share this, but these are basically what Aaron is mapping as top 2.5% corridors for wildlife movement from the Northfield Range over to the Green Mountain Range. So as we've heard multiple times now, we have great conservation up high. We've got great connectivity running north-south, both on the Northfield side and obviously on the Green Mountain side. And then the challenge is how is wildlife moving across the valley. So as Aaron just did an extension of beyond the Facein borders by a mile, I believe. So this is a Facein specific map. And then he's looking at the potential opportunities, basically knowing that these critters have a wide dispersal means for movement. There's not going to be one particular route that they're going to choose. So they're going to be moving in a variety of different ways. But how are they moving from one large forest block to the next? So Facein is lucky to have a lot of forest block. And certainly as you move west and then abut the Green Mountains, there's a ton of forest block. So Aaron's looking at the different forest blocks you have and looking at the potential connectivity for movement through from one forest block to the next. And so the concept here is basically if we were to get to a zoning level of an overlay district or something to that extent, and we identified that there are certain habitats that are incredibly important to allow for movement of wildlife, we could be doing something similar to what Warren is moving forward with. And I'm this is just hypothetical stuff. But we would be identifying the critical areas where there's a good forest block on one side and a good forest block on the other side, and then there's just a little bit in the likelihood based on the coloration that Aaron uses, and all of this is easier to play around at home on a computer, allows you to see these little pinch points, but there's really not a lot. Like here, if you're moving through kind of towards Fen Basin area, right, he's like, okay, there's just this little bit up by the triangle where you can get from one forest block to the next, and so that would be a high area to make sure it doesn't get developed.
Brian, can you describe what the colors are telling us?
Well, so over here, he basically explains, so for least cost paths, which can be considered the highest value, most direct line through a corridor is pink. The most direct line through the corridor, and then the top 2.5% corridor is orange, and then corridor centers are in red. Core area of the top corridor is up to 700 feet wide. So and most of the Arrowwood work this is all modeling work. And this is all based on Arrowwood's, and I can't explain it nearly as well as Aaron or others here probably can, the basic forest block modeling mechanisms that the state of Vermont is using and Fish and Wildlife experts are using to look at this type of movement. So that's how he is mapping these necks, basically, between forest blocks for movement. So we'll share this with everyone. The basic next steps for us are, this is all modeling, so I think we're gonna think about in 2026, some field verification and some on the ground work. See what that might look like. Aaron did talk about more fine grained mapping of forest blocks. That would come after we have a little bit more on the ground data. And then he also identified the potential for conservation priorities for forest blocks and also the idea of regulating through the potential of overlay districts or other means to ensure that whatever necks we have that are allowing for movement aren't further degraded, especially where there's bigger blocks and we want to let critters move through them.
Thanks.
So that's one of our, major accomplishments so far this year. Plenty of other excellent work that's been done over at Boyce to provide recreation access, new steps for the pond, new bridges, all kinds of great things that I was not involved with, but we also did, it's a balance there. So there's preservation and then there's recreation. So to make sure we could maintain some of the views, we did do some cutting, but then we did chip that wood to enhance the soil, and that will be a positive, I think. Continued our invasive work. We really did step it up this year in Basin as we continue to learn from Warren and Wakefield. Did quite a bit more tree planting. Volunteerism was up. Excellent partnership with the Bee app. Probably most people have heard about that. That is not a conservation thing, but something we can all utilize to help our conservation efforts and our volunteer efforts. What else? Bear Initiative. We had a good year there. You probably have seen in live, but you can also see pictures in this newsletter of the two bear
Totes.
bear
Garbage.
what are they called? Bear Saber. Bear Saber trash receptacles at Lareau and at Bridge Street. So if used properly, that will deal with our bear issues there. What else? We don't have a rehearsed script here. This is wonderful. We were featured, the Mad River Valley Bear Initiative, in Vermont Fish and Wildlife's
2 webinars that they held this fall as a really great example of community outreach and partnership. So that was great. And then, the dialogue that we have with them. And maybe finally, we are working on pollinator gardens at Chase Brook and Facein Elementary. Amy and I spent an afternoon or a morning with half a dozen Harwood students on their community service day, and worked over at Facein Elementary, and we're working with Mike Kiernan at Be the Change. He also would be very happy to come do a presentation, and maybe this is at the end, but I'd love to propose that we do another type of pollinator presentation, not exactly like we did in the fall of 2023, but something along those lines.
Could I just add, how often do you put out this newsletter? This is a very nice newsletter.
Thank you. We work hard on that. Spring,
shows.
summer, and fall.
Spring, summer, and fall. Okay.
But it's only started, and it wasn't May, it was another person on our Conservation Commission in the spring of 2024 or summer of 24, so it's their second year.
Very nicely done.
Concur with that.
And I am pleased to announce also that we did already have our budget meeting with the Facein Select Board, and they were supportive of the continuation of our invasive species work, fully supportive of it, and that was wonderful. And also our Conservation Reserve Fund, so.
What is your conservation reserve fund funding?
I think about 60 right now.
What are you
That's
for?
an opportunity.
Easements or,
But what
Contribution per
amount?
year.
oh, what is it? It
What
has
amount?
historically been 3,500, so it's, it's not Warren level, but it's 4,000 this year.
It's growing.
It's growing.
There were some questions about it because it's not being used, and so I'm getting nervous that if we don't find something to do with it, they will stop.
There's 1,100 acres that are about to be conserved.
Maybe Facein could participate in that.
Yeah, so if you do hear of anything, all right, obviously, concerning
By
that, but
far the best
I don't
argument
want to take this.
for a reserve fund is you have the ammunition when it's needed.
Oh, get it.
Right.
I think that argument was being tested a little bit, because we haven't used it, so we'll see.
yeah, I think some was used at Knoll Farm, but that was quite a few years ago. 20,000, I think, is the number.
Sometimes you don't want to use it each year.
Oh,
Right,
for
no,
sure.
not each year, yeah.
Yeah, a project every 10 years would be probably a great thing for Facein
Mhm.
to engage in, to just keep the momentum moving on acquisition or conservation.
Excellent, thank you, guys.
Nice
Appreciate the
job.
discussion. Yep, indeed. Now it's our turn. You want me to
Thanks,
kick it off, and then I'll turn it over to you, and we can go through it. So, I highlighted just one item here for.
Somebody needs the cooler.
We're good? Let's start from waste for now. I just want to make sure everybody hears, so there's no need to say the conversation in the background. So, with for waste fields, like a couple of things, I'm just gonna highlight one item here, and then Kurt is the one who's gonna do most of the information. The main thing for us is related to the village and fairgrounds. So we are in the process, we just issued an RFP for our monsoon planning for both lands, so it's something that just got issued. We are going, waiting for the RFP to come back, work through the management plan. It's something that we also going to go to the public, give an opportunity for the public to see what we try to do. The goal is for us by 2026 to complete that management plan. So that's the idea at the end of 2026. So that's one of the items we're working on. And then I'll turn over to our chair who has a list of items.
And you may or may not remember, but there was a significant donation of land to the town of Wastefield that expanded Blue Edges by like 50%. So we've done lots of ecological and trail assessments of that property. So we've got all the data now that we need to develop a management plan for Blue and this new fairgrounds property.
Who are you working with for the management plan? That's the RFP?
We haven't selected anyone yet.
We just issued the RFP.
How much is the county forester helping you guys?
He did a complete forest assessment.
Really?
Great.
He did a nice job. He partnered with the previous, two of them did it, Robert Nelson,
Yeah.
and then the new guy, Brendan.
Friends.
Brandon Benedict, yeah, they did a really nice job. So, quickly, some other things, at Scrag Mountain, we put in a new, mile-long trail a year or so ago. Next June, we hope to complete the next segment of that trail, which will take a nice wandering loop up to the Beaver Pond area. And the goal is to, over time, get people off the old logging roads. And the trail builder we've been using, Apex, is just terrific. And then the third phase will be to connect from that upper trail all the way up to the top of town, town property, it's Scrag Forest. And then hopefully down the road, if we can get an easement or permission from some adjoining landowners to get up to Scrag Mountain. The Farley Memorial Park, which is on Route 100 across from Catholic Church. That will be, the plan is to have a dedication of that new park in Virginia Farley's memory on May 2nd. So there's going to be some pollinator gardens there, and there's some stone benches, which she loved. Apparently they are there, and then a trail through the property. And we're also doing very extensive invasive species management and restoration work there. Tons and tons. On the invasive species work, a few things to note. We've partnered with two invasive species ecologists from Indiana who are just terrific, and they're really kind of upping our kind of scientific game and allowing us to see things and do things that we wouldn't be able to do on our own. An example of that is we're putting in more and more like measurement plots. So these are 3x3 plots, and there's 100 of them now around the valley, where we're managing knotweed and really trying to understand which methods work best and what happens after we have managed the knotweed. And there's some very interesting findings. So you can see these bar charts. This is the average stem diameter of knotweed over 3 years. So it's dropped by 50%. So it's a good indicator of a weakening plant. We're also measuring what else is growing in that plot. And we're seeing an increase in which the ecologists call native species richness. So other native species also improving on those plots. And then a more negative finding. We're also finding in those plots that there are other non-natives moving in. So this kind of
What majority, do you know what most is?
White clover, dandelion, coltsfoot, creeping jenny. And I can tell you from not these plots, but other plots, goutweed is just exploding. So it's really challenging us to think more holistically about managing those sites, for multiple, they call co-occurring invasive species. So that's going to be kind of, I think, an increased focus going forward.
Who are the experts you're working with?
They're on the faculty at UVM in the Rubenstein School. Noelia Barrios Garcia, and her husband is Mariano Rodriguez Cabal. all the interns we have every year have taken classes with them. And the interns just love them. They're a treasure. They are applying for research dollars that they can focus on work in the Mandarin Valley.
So beyond just Waitsfield?
Yes, so the whole valley, they want the valley to be their primary research. So they have master's students and PhD students, so they're going after that aggressively. So that partnership has been just a joy. We also have applied for another Lake Champlain Basin Program grant to the tune of $130,000.
I'm sorry, I just want to put a plug here because I have to give the plug to Kurt.
No.
Kurt, I'm very serious. The amount of work that goes behind that grant and how he works behind the scene to make sure it gets allocated to each of the town, it's enormous. We're supposed to be held by a treasurer that was changed within our town, but ultimately Kurt stepped up to the plate. I cannot stop to thank Kurt for what he does. I'm very serious. It's a lot of work. Okay.
I see the lights on in his office all night long.
I second that. We're so grateful.
Sorry, you can go on, Kurt. Thank you. I had to say it.
Some of the things this new grant includes, it's for this holistic management of invasive species, getting more sophisticated about restoration, going beyond conservation drugs, introduction in 3 science classes at Harwood, so building invasive species and restoration in the curriculum at Harwood High School. The science department, and Susanna Cowden is the primary teacher. She's a Facein resident, I believe. Cowden, yeah, that's the name. We're also proposing to support a field naturalist master's student from the University of Vermont to do their master's project in the Mad River Valley on our work. And for those of you who know about the field naturalist graduates, they are extraordinary. So to have one of them spend a whole year studying what we're doing, advising us on how to get better, I think will be a real benefit to us. And the last thing I had, and this just came in today, Waitsfield has been involved in a study of kind of floodplain, river floodplain reconnections. And an engineering report was done by Watershed Consulting that looked at possibilities for floodplain reconnection kind of from the property just south of George's, right on this side of the river, and then Farley Park's right across the river, and then all the way down to the fairgrounds property. So that's mostly all Waitsfield town-owned or controlled land. And they evaluated 5 sites for possible floodplain reconnection, and the 2 they found most promising were the fairgrounds property. There's like that's a 9-acre property across from the Austin parcel and Lareau. And then the other one is the private property just adjoining George's land here. And both felt were good candidates for floodplain restoration. The Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission kind of coordinated this, found the money for it. And Brian Voigt encouraged me to say if other towns are interested in studying those kinds of things, he would be happy to help out and join in.
Can you briefly talk about floodplain restoration of what that looks like? Or
I don't know this is like the first step in the process, and they're recommending that more detailed plans be developed for both of these properties, which I think gets into more of the details. But I think at the fairgrounds property, I think it would involve kind of lowering the land, so the water has more access to that big plain. But So these are big projects.
There was also rechannelizing, because there was a channel at the fairgrounds, there's a back channel that you never see, that during a flood spreads water onto that.
Right.
If that could be opened up more,
Mhm.
it would really change the outlook of what would happen below that.
Right.
It would really expand the floodplain.
And well, and this report also says that the work there could be made more affordable because it said much of the dirt that's removed could be basically put up against the forest. So you wouldn't have to truck the material out of that property, which would be a big job. Because it's about moving a lot of earth, I guess. So I think that's
Great.
That's Waitsfield.
Thank you, Kurt. Does a lot of work for us. So with that said, now we have roughly 50 minutes left for us before we conclude the meeting. So one is we were supposed to talk about the conservation creation vision or any items any initiatives that you guys have would like to work and share with us. So this is a chance for us to have this open dialogues. Anything you want to discuss and you want to share, or things that we want to work together, figure out if there's any initiative that may be able to benefit all the three towns. So this is a chance for us to share ideas.
Do we want to talk about the Northfield Range, even though faces
I would
is
love to
not
see,
quite there?
but I think it's, it's ultimately is going to benefit the valley. So and that's where we look at here. We can, and I think it's important for faces to hear what we have to discuss.
I already introduced it, so now
Okay. Well, it's a nascent effort. We've had a couple meetings. We had good participation from the Vermont Land Trust. They've shared some data with us on the range, as has Arrowwood. And this came out of a meeting I had with the chair of the Northfield Conservation Commission. Many of you know of him. Former director of Audubon, Vermont, and DEC, right? Yeah. And we were just kicking, so you're a neighboring conservation commission, so we just got together to talk about what's going on and what we do better. This idea emerged from that discussion. So, the early plans are to develop kind of like a mission statement, for this effort to kind of guide us. Kate and Meade Binhammer from DLT are going to be putting together the background information on what makes the Northfield Range special and why, and what the kind of conservation opportunities are. And then we've talked about the idea of trying out kind of an informal get-together with several landowners, on the Northfield side and on the Mad River Valley side, just to begin involving them in the conservation discussions about what might be possible. And I think that's about where we stand now. But what else, Kate or Guido, Bruno, would you like to add?
I think you cover everything, and the idea is to basically make sure that the landowner understands what we're trying to do as conservation. And most of them, because we have out-of-towners or people who live in the state, they're not really aware of it. So by educating them, it may give us a chance. Most of the people come here to buy land because they can afford it, and it doesn't mean anything for their money. So but they don't really have that concept of, okay, what I'm going to do with that. So it's more of the idea of educating them and see the benefits of what we're trying to achieve with ultimate goals for us as a conservation purpose.
And one of the ideas is the vehicle has a name, and it just exists as a way of referencing this work in embodied whatever the name of the association is. It's pretty loosely associated, but it does say there's somebody caring about this land on a regular basis. So I don't think we've actually formally introduced that. So there's a chance for a press event, and you know, it would be a way of getting everybody aware that there's people concerned and caring about this.
What's the role in Moortown?
We've invited representatives from Moortown, from their recreation committee, to join the effort. One of our Conservation Commission members, Gail O'Keefe, is a large landowner in Moortown. She's involved in the conversations. And, you know, I think hearing from both Mead and Kate, you know, the kind of geographic focus that seems to make sense is kind of like from Granville, you know, to the river, basically. Because you need to put some boundary. Yeah, exactly.
Along the neighborhood.
Right. So, you know, it helps just to kind of have a geographic focus. You could always get bigger and bigger. This seems to make sense for this more local effort. And we're also talking about, you know, who else could we invite to be involved in the conservation conversations? You know, perhaps someone from the state, perhaps someone from the HCP, for instance. But we're being well guided by Mead and Kate. I mean, they know this world, right? So.
Are you familiar now with all the landowners going up from Whitesville, Moortown?
Oh, they've all been on my list for 15 years.
We know who they are.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, some have changed hands recently. Some of the big ones in Moortown have changed hands recently, so that brings new opportunity. Because the old ones weren't interested, so.
But for those that didn't see the most recent Vermont Fish and Wildlife webinar on overlay districts, one of the slides they used, I didn't get to in time, but was the valley, and they had a bunch of very strong looking arrows running through the Northfield Range and talking about the high connectivity up there.
Yeah, I think from a state standpoint, the Vermont Land Trust has identified this as one of the very high priority now.
For us.
I have a question with everybody doing similar work with Arrowwood. Are there ways to see who already has land on these in conservation easements and what type of conservation easement? Because we've been looking at doing that with our property. We have 32 acres that butts into something, but it's been challenging for us to find information and to, you know, person we met with the other day suggested talking with adjacent landowners to see if we could use similar conservation easements, for example. So I was wondering if any of those things show up on the maps that we have now already, or is that a layer that would be useful or could be
There is
added?
a layer of conserved lands
Okay,
that shows up in our maps. So and then those, you know, once you know what the property is, you can go to whoever has that conservation easement to sort of get the detail.
So if you look on A&R Atlas, so Google A&R Atlas, that will connect you to a protected lands data layer. And then you can find out, you can zoom into your neighborhood, find out all the private conservation easements and who holds them. In the valley, I'd say 90% of them, of the private conservation easements, are held by Vermont Land Trust. And that data also will say whether it grants public access or not, but that's the easiest source for you to go to.
okay.
Kate, what was that one more time?
A&R
A&R Atlas.
Atlas.
Atlas, okay.
I mean, there's another GIS data layer called, if you go to VCGI, but for people that don't know GIS, like A&R Atlas is the easiest way to get in.
Are there conservation easements that would not show up on, like, how much of that exists?
There's some WRE easements held by NRCS that aren't in there. Sometimes some of the New England Forestry Foundation easements haven't shown up. But in the valley, I think it definitely holds one or two. It's, in the valley, it's really just Vermont Land Trust. And then, I mean, there's other kind of deed restrictions on some properties that are not held by a land trust. And that doesn't show up. That is individually each town, but,
One point that I think Neat Dinhammer did make at our first meeting was that there are more opportunities for smaller properties now for conservation reasons, and more money available generally than in the past.
yes.
We'd love to hear more about that,
Yeah.
actually.
So,
But that's about all I can say.
but yeah,
I don't know more
there's, so
beyond that.
Vermont Housing Conservation Board, which is the state source of conservation funding for farmland and forest land, was really good about funding small farms and not good at all about funding small forests. That has changed over the last 10 years. There's now kind of a new funding source from the HEB for private forest land easements. But it's still really, Vermont Land Trust isn't holding easements on many things under 200 acres. Like 30 acres is tough unless you're a farm, or potentially if you're on a river. If you're on a river, DEC could be very interested in holding a easement on your property. There's a lot of money available for riparian easements through the state right now. Usually a river, not a stream. But I mean, it doesn't hurt reaching out to DEC and then, Warren, we're looking at tiny properties all the time too. So it kind of depends on
But aren't you
whether
looking-
the
aren't you
town
looking-
might be interested.
Aren't you looking for connectivity? I
Yeah.
mean, we just don't pick up a piece just if it's just sitting out there isolated. We want to, make sure we're connecting stuff.
We town bought a 10-acre parcel that is just a critical piece. And I think the thinking is, can we combine that with other land to get a conservation easement down the road? Would be the goal.
So as part of kind of the Act 59, which passed a year and a half ago, the protecting 30% of Vermont by 2030 and 50% of Vermont by 2050. There's a lot of us, conservation organizations, the state, and a lot of other entities that are working together to create a conservation plan over the next year to get there, and really focused around ecological representation and biodiversity and ecological functioning. So not really too focused on kind of recreation or conservation of those conservation values, but really around ecological functioning across the whole state. And one of the topics that we are really trying to figure out how to do is smaller parcels. We know how to do big stuff. We can't figure out small stuff. And, figuring out new incentives, new mechanisms for potentially town holding kind of easements on 30 acres or 20 acres that are important, so they don't get developed. Creating more smaller regional land trusts. The Nature Conservancy is actually working down in southeastern Vermont where there is no smaller regional land trust to create some to focus on some of these high biodiversity focus areas, but no land trusts that are really dealing in that size. So it is something we've been talking about for decades as a need, but there is a lot of attention right now focused on figuring that out.
How tough is it for all of those folks that are in current use but are interested in conservation focused either forestry or going into the 3030 forest reserve if they have enough of the attributes that would make their property eligible? Is that a realistic tool? I guess the question would be, would it be advisable for Facein Conservation Commission to have seminars talking about current use? Are there enough properties that could be eligible for forest reserve in current use within the valley to get at, it's like a different way of getting kind of at a conservation easement for somebody that has land who just wants the tax break but doesn't really want the forestry aspect beyond creating patch cuts or whatever it is for healthy forest. But I don't have a good sense of, I know it's hard to get a property into forest reserve, and I don't know if that's like really a viable mechanism for folks.
Yeah, it all depends on the actual qualities on your property. If you have a lot of wetlands, if you have some really weird, strange natural communities, then you can get in, but it's, and that just means that you aren't required to manage it, but it still can be taken out of current use.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not permanently conserved. There's no easement on there. So it doesn't offer any extra legal protection to that property. It's, you can get out the same way you can from a regular current use, but it does allow you to not have to manage it.
Yeah, I just know there are pressures. We're hearing about folks under current use that are feeling the pressure. And I don't know.
You really have to hire a
forester
or an ecologist to like help you figure out whether they can get you there or not.
But this idea of connectivity isn't enough. If somebody's got, it's just not enough.
But current use is one of kind of the ideas that we're all talking about as part of the 30 by 30 plan of, could you create different tiers of current use that would encourage more landowners to conserve their land by donating easements? So you have a higher tax break if your land is conserved and in current use and then like, you know, there's a lower tier for if you don't allow any public access and it's not conserved, then you're not gonna get the same tax break. So there's discussions about ways we can tweak current use to encourage more long-term conservation.
I have a question for folks. What did we learn through the CRV process about working together, you know, on specific projects? I was involved in like some of the initial discussions, but I wasn't, you know, intimately involved after that. So I'm just wondering if there's some things we can learn from that we can kind of carry forward as we think about other collaboration opportunities.
If I could chip in on an answer to that,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that Jim and I have served on that for now, coming on 3 years. One of the powerful takeaways was the value of consensus rather than majority in terms of the decision making. And by working towards consensus decisions, we actually created a much stronger bond between what might have been kind of opposing camps. So as you may remember, the CRV was largely peopled by people from the recreation side, and then there were people from the conservation side. And that was sort of set up in I know that Jim and I talked early on about, are we sort of set up for failure here and being polarized? And the solution really was working towards consensus.
Good point.
I would offer that for the CRV process, one of the critical elements was having a hub coordinator. So that can manage communications, manage the agenda, and I feel like, you know, one of my many failures, certainly here with this group, is coming out of the last meeting. There was these concepts of having more, we talked about subcommittees on different issues, we talked about more meetings, and then everybody just kind of leaves, and there's so much going on, you know, as we hear tonight. And I didn't grab any reins to try to say, hey, what's happened? Like, should we just kind of got caught up with the things I got caught up with and just was in that road going away from this table for a year until I came back. And so I think without some sort of coordinator, it is hard. So CRV functioned very well because there was a coordinator. And I also think that helps create space, like a facilitator or coordinator can help the group if there is conflict. By just having this one person who's bringing the meeting together and asking questions and then seeing where folks are at and seeing how them, rather than, I don't know, there's a lot of success through CRV, I think just through the management of the group, not like the things they were doing, but just the way it was coming together and that made it very helpful and that kind of shifted a little bit, but it'll be interesting to see where it goes with Sam stepping away from his role, how we manage. We have an interim plan, but we don't have a long-term plan for that, so. I would definitely think that's a critical element for any sort of campaign. You know, the invasives, you guys are always, you're so close. But if it was bigger issues, some of the things we're talking about here without some sort of person kind of managing it and bringing folks together when it's appropriate, it's going to be a little hard.
I have a question about the land acquisition. You guys just did that little parcel and you've had that parcel up Rock Spring Gap. How proactive have your conservation commissions been in targeting, okay, well, we need that piece of dirt, you know, to be conserved? It's one thing to be responsive when a piece of land comes up for sale, and it's an entirely different thing if you've really kind of got a plan about this is how we'd like to acquire easements or actual ownership in various sensitive areas. It's been proactive.
Maybe semi-proactive in Waitsfield. I mean, we really targeted, you know, the expansion of Scrag Mountain Town Forest. And so that's grown now, it's like about 900 acres now. Like a year or so ago, we found a clever way to add 40 acres for nothing. Leo could explain it, how we did that. But, and then
But you initiated that to get those?
Well, we always keep an eye on it, and we always try to figure out who is coming in, and you know.
We were connected with the people who, you know, involved in the transactions and with the realtors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're fortunate enough that they brought in these people that we mindful, they don't mind donating land, so that's the whole that's we try that.
And then with the fairgrounds, the town has had its eye on that for 40 years.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you know, this dysfunctional estate, you know, the legal issues involved in that were resolved and it went on the market like that.
Yeah.
And you know, the town can't turn around and put an offer in, but we found some very civic-minded conservation buyers who acquired it right away. And then over time, you know, donate to the town, which was just an amazing gift.
Indeed.
I think in Ward, we sort of have a priority list of areas that we think are attainable. And then you just watch what's happening and try to talk to them before they get too far down the road.
I also get paid for it.
Yeah.
So that helps. It's my day job. So.
Could you get a second home in Waitsfield?
And a third in Facein.
I think we need her more.
No, if we have a reserve fund, right, it's one thing. And if you have a reserve fund, it's just waiting for that parcel to become.
Well, I would love to talk to you because I have a priority list of my own for Facein. We should talk. 'Cause
Yeah.
Yeah. We've also had for a long-standing relationship with the Land Trust. You know, when Liza Walker was here and before that, Virginia Farley, and they were always, they just, like Kate, they just know what's going on, what's important, and so having that intelligence is just a gift.
Yeah, one thing the Facein Conservation Commission doesn't have is intelligence.
But you have connections, so.
Well, I don't know, we're kind of thin on connections too.
Your commission has been
We're young.
revitalized.
I mean,
I think revitalized.
We are revitalizing, yes.
It
But we have a
shows.
new commission
It shows.
member here. We may have another one shortly down the pipeline.
So one, I think the successes in the last few years is the vision that we are a watershed. And speaking towards watershed at whatever you do is really resonates at lots of levels, and it really gets outside of our little forced bureaucracies. And, you know, so in Warren, we had a little bit of battle when we asked the town to take over the upper mat, which is in Granville. And they said, no, we can't pay for you to do knotweed work in Granville. And I said, well, they're not gonna do it, and we talked to Watershed, we should take it. And eventually I got the select board to agree to support our work and pay for it, even though it was in Granville. And we also did a little piece of Lincoln in the watershed. And the idea is like, those don't matter. That is not what matters. What matters is the watershed. And that is a way of gelling everybody without actually having organizations that are like watershed-centric organizations.
Which means we need to get more town to this table.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and along those lines, Duxbury also drains into the Mad River Service. There's a town that's split. Half of it drains, more than half drains towards Waterbury, but there's a certain percentage that drains towards Harwood High School. So they should be in our conversation too.
And Duxbury Land Trust is a great land trust. I mean, they're small, but they're doing work every year.
So I can say in Moortown, there is no negativity to what we're doing. They're just not showing up. And so just keep talking to your friends in Moortown. You gotta show up.
Anybody watching the Ken Burns
Yeah.
special?
Awesome.
Episode one.
Moortown is
He's
showing up
listed.
in almost every episode.
Really?
Peter.
There's a guy named John Peters.
Yeah.
On the American Revolution?
Yes,
From
yes.
Moortown, Vermont.
And then there's a ton about, Vermont is a central player in the Burns story. Of course, Lake Champlain. and
Oh, yeah.
everything. But John, Moortown.
Oh, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, Moortown has more huge unconserved parcels than anywhere else in the valley. Like,
Oh, wow.
what would be, it makes me think that for CRV, you had 15 stakeholders, recreation, conservation. Moortown was at the table, Duxbury Land Trust was at the table. You had this big initiative, obviously, like the grant and the effort helped, and folks came to the table, I think, honestly interested and curious to see what could come out of it. But I feel like you need something like substantive to because conversations with Chris Stevenson or others, he's like, I'm the rec district, we don't have a conservation commission, so. And Chris wears a lot of different hats, and he's like, I'm gonna talk to the Stark Mountain Foundation, I'm gonna talk to Moortown Rec, and then and so it would just, I think if there was something galvanizing between the three commissions, and there are already galvanizing things, but if it was, there was something substantive where the pitch is, not only do we want, but like we really need Moortown to be part of this watershed effort and put some, I guess just a pressure behind the idea of pushing in that direction. I know there's conversations about it, the Conservation Commission, but even if it's not, if there's some sort of non-Conservation Commission speaker from Moortown that would participate quasi like the rec district. But I don't know, but I think it begs the question here, and this question came up last year, who else are we inviting beyond the three conservation commissions? And so if we have a meeting next year, we had talked about Friends of the Mad River, we had talked to, if you weren't a part of the Conservation Commission, we would be missing out on a lot of really valuable information to learn about what VLT is up to and how they participate, and just the knowledge base is just incredible. But who, like, what does this look like? I think is an important question for us in 2026. And if there's something galvanizing, then it might be more interesting for those entities to come.
I mean, what you're saying is we want to invite a Moortown representative to the next meeting with us.
I'm curious about it. I'm not exactly sure who it
Wait a
is.
year.
Which is
Probably
probably,
Chris, you know?
I mean, on Tuesday, it sounded like if it hadn't happened already, that it was pretty close to happening in Moortown
is it?
for a conservation commission. And that this should be, because then that was the joke after I said we were having our tri-town meeting,
Okay.
that was excluding others. So maybe we're having a watershed conservation meeting next year to invite Moortown, Duxbury Land.
Maybe we could have a little delegation ask for some time at a select board meeting and say, we would be very willing to help
Great.
and share what we've learned and share some of the background. And we did that on the invasive species about a year ago. And we have a couple regular volunteers in Wakefield, who live in Moortown. And they'd like to see a conservation commission come to support them.
And also just giving examples of what the conservation commissions have all done over the last 20 years. Because they're different. Like, other conservation commissions are really into education and, getting people out on the land and learning about insects or whatever. And others are focused on conservation and planning, and others are focused on very different things. So there are like a whole suite of things that they can choose to focus on, and giving them, some ideas and might be helpful.
The galvanizing issue for me has been the crisis of the biosphere. To me, it's just simple that we're in a moment where nature is being degraded by human activities. And we need to find, in my view, a different way to relate to the earth and to see the other lives, the other species that inhabit this place as our partners, rather than simply ignoring their interests and needs. I realize that is to me, it seems like an easy galvanizing issue, but maybe it's a little abstract to bring another town to the table.
Big integrated vision in mind and understanding of the issue. And the climate crisis, was has the same challenge. It's like, I can't wrap my head around it. Give me something smaller that I can focus on.
So some of us are members of the Vermont Biodiversity Conservation Alliance. Not all of us went to the annual meeting. But it does make me think about what the Mad River Valley entities and obviously there's so much government, experts and that participate in that. But it makes me think about what does a Mad River Valley Biodiversity Alliance or initiative of the commissions look like, to bring some meat to the bones of it? Like, what would be if we sat down and looked at it and thought about, okay, what all of the work is biodiversity, invasives, conservation, corridors, it's all related, but it's just trying to create more of a thread to it all that falls under this
We could set
umbrella.
some valley-wide goals.
Right.
I don't even know. I know Warren has already met our 30 by 30, but I don't know what it is for the valley. Or, working towards 50 by 50 and seeing what it's going to take to get there. Or, looking at the goals of the national park in every packet. What was it called?
America Beautiful?
No, what,
Yeah, half the planet.
no, not half Earth, but, you brought him here, he spoke here at Flatbread about.
Tell me, Doug, tell me.
Tell me.
Yeah.
National Park.
American
Backyard
National-
Parks.
Homegrown.
Backyard.
National Park.
Yeah, that one.
Homegrown National
Yeah.
Park.
Yeah,
So like,
That park.
with a goal of like, as many or a certain number of landowners as possible, like signing a pledge that I'm gonna manage my own backyard, under these, major tenants to improve biodiversity in the valley.
I've put all our Waitsfield invasive species in that map. And I discovered that Vermont has the highest level participation per capita in homegrown national park of any state. Or maybe we're second. I think we're second. But
Got something to work toward.
to be number one.
That's a great idea.
Be number one?
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
can create kind of a joint vision for the valley of all
But
our work.
Warren and Facein are easier to meet that goal. And Waitsfield's got a lot more farmland. And there's a lot more open land in Waitsfield.
You still can't get out of it. Come on.
Get out of what?
Goals.
Well, we're gonna have to change the farm fields, I guess, to make that goal.
Well, that's exactly Eileen, Chris' point, is that our farms need to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I'll say that as a complicated issue is that should we collectively ask about glyphosate use in the Mad River Valley? And what does that mean to the existing farms and their economies, and what is it meaning to the ecology of the Mad River Valley? And these can be conflicting issues, but this is where it's happening. And I think at some point it will be responsible for us to address the issue.
So are we just talking about one farmer?
Well, I think that may be, but we're talking about a lot of land across many towns.
One Warren farm.
I think, but I don't know for sure, but yes, I think largely. Yeah.
Certainly a lot of energy behind it on Front Porch Forum.
Yeah. We had a thing in our town in Massachusetts in Rockport where they were trying to do public education around carbon capture. And the vehicle that they used was the local composting company. And what they did is they invited people for movie screenings of a film called Kiss the Ground, Kiss the Earth, something like that, where it's all regenerative agriculture. And then it ended up being a 3-film series that's out there. You can stream it on Netflix, on Amazon Prime. But what they were really trying to do is educate the average person about what our footprint is. What are things that we can do to reduce our carbon footprint? How can we capture more carbon? How can we get people composting and seeing the value of this, changing how they farm? And it really was a huge focus on farming, but this was really looking globally. But boy, did the number of people composting picked up hugely. People planting their own gardens picked up, because people were really looking for support in how do I do this? Just an idea, because they do address the glyphosate. And just the different methods of farming. But it was really useful and really got people engaged.
I bet we could get a nice big pick to.
Yeah, kiss the ground, kiss the earth.
I remember that.
But they were good films. Woody Harrelson actually.
There's another one called Common Ground.
Yeah, Kiss the Ground. So it's a bunch of them that they have, but they were good.
You sort of have to pick an issue. I mean, there's so many things. Sort of like, I think maybe it's a galvanizing issue, but you do have to pick something to focus on, and maybe you do that for a couple of years, then you can move to something else. But we don't, other than the activities that we've been doing for 5, 6, 7 years, we haven't really gotten a new issue that we said, okay, we're going to all champion the same issue. And I don't know what it should be.
Geographically, what came up for me was the wildlife corridor thing, because we were leading on it, but, you know, that's easy to turn into a valley-wide. Good reasons why that could be a valley-wide thing. I don't know if that's gonna rile all the citizenry to get behind it or not, but for us collaboratively, that makes sense to me.
I think a very worthwhile effort would be to, throughout the valley, to identify potential beaver habitat. Beaver are arguably the most important keystone species that we are far short of in the ecosystem. And if there were more beaver here, we would have a very different, richer, more robust ecosystems. Largely, although beaver exists, but they don't exist anywhere near the numbers that they did historically, and therefore don't have the impact that they did before. And lots of times those changes are because of our roads, different configurations of the valley floor. Just this summer and fall, I worked with students and we built a beaver dam analog on a little brooklet here at Lareau Farm, really to explore this idea of can we kind of recreate some of the merits of this kind of habitat in the absence of beaver being able to be successful in the habitat that remains. So I think there's different approaches here, but I think it would be terrific to, at a minimum, to simply identify potential beaver habitat in the valley, and that may then alert us to a sensitivity about, maybe that's something sort of like a corridor that we should be wary of developing.
Isn't there a beaver deceiver at Lawson's? I thought they put one in, I think,
I hope so.
a couple of years ago.
You're right.
They did.
Yeah.
I think so.
I haven't heard anything about it if it worked.
But a lot of the problems, a lot of the beaver, they end up next to the roads.
Right.
And sometimes they say, well, knock the beaver out, when instead they should be finding some way to
Right.
get the water.
Yeah.
And I think there are strategies. There's challenges.
Yeah,
There's clearly challenges with beaver, but there's enormous benefits to them.
yeah.
The state expert on beavers visited a few of the places where we're working on invasive species, because the beavers are taking down some of the young trees we planted. Just to talk with them about, what's going on here. And he said, well, those trees will come back, so they won't look quite as pretty, so that's fine. And we put a little fencing around some trees, but he did say that the beaver population in the Mad River Valley is growing quickly. And he felt, relative to other regions is fairly healthy, but it's clearly expanding. He says they're looking for new habitat. So they'll come to some limits, I think, but I wouldn't have known that, but, and they're very active, right around here too.
I have a sign up that says beavers welcome.
Yeah, but they're taking stuff down across the river from you on Waitsfield town property.
Well, that's their behavior, right?
They didn't read the sign.
So we were talking about a galvanizing principle, and George brought up the crisis in the biosphere. And then the question was like, what can we do about it? And then a lot of discussion of different kinds of habitat. You've got corridors, you've got beaver habitat, and organizing sort of on a watershed basis. But I'm wondering if, the galvanizing principle couldn't be around the crisis in the biosphere, but the action that gets us connected to that could be focusing on habitat, whether it be through corridors or beaver habitat, and that the organizational boundary that we're working with would be more watershed in order to try to bring in Duxbury and Moortown.
And I think that the lesson from Doug Talmey, individual and small group choices can make a world of difference locally to the abundance and diversity of wildlife. And that's the good news.
Right, so that can get away from maybe some of the hopelessness that you might feel if you just talk about like a crisis in the biosphere and like, what can I do? I'm just saying. Or climate change, you know, something along the lines of that. You know? Anything that you talk about is.
Political change. No, well, we haven't got there.
I just mean, small actions.
Understood.
Sorry if it came out wrong.
No, came out right.
It's gonna look good on tape.
When was Doug here? Because with this biodiversity series, the presentations, we've had wildlife corridors, we've had,
Doug Tellamy?
was he here?
2021,
Okay.
Was it before COVID?
right before.
Before was
2019.
19.
2019.
So before was 19, not 21.
Because I started going as soon as I got here, but I didn't remember that one. Is he someone that would pair with, he would be
You
his
won't get
own?
him back.
No, that will never
No,
happen?
He is just so
But
in
he preached the gospel and, you can evangelize, whatever the word is.
You can get him online.
Across the whole
There's a lot of great videos. of
I
his
think the
talks.
video that's from here is
It's
available.
pretty good.
That was an excellent
Yeah.
presentation.
He changed we have some red oak on our property, changed my relationship with that red oak.
Yeah.
I planted a Tellamy over.
Did you?
behind the house.
Is there any interest in having Ethan Tapper come back as a joint effort with all the conservation commissions? He's putting out a new book and he's expanding and very, very popular all over. It'd be hard to get
His
him.
book won the New England Book Award
Yeah,
out of Lareau Forest.
it's a beautiful book.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and he is willing to come. He came and talked to the mountain gardeners. So-
And I know he talks in his new book about bears.
Mhm.
So I thought, I
Well,
mentioned it.
yeah.
He's getting expensive is the only problem. But I think it would be a big draw for sure. Maybe
So let's go back to we, a few years ago, started this biodiversity series. And the idea was 1 or 2 speakers a year on that topic. It would be supported by one conservation commission and the next conservation commission. And so I think Amy is sort of leading the charge this year to say, okay, what do we want? Who do we want to come and will we all chip in? And so we will chip in, and the question is, okay, let's agree it's somebody, and maybe the topic itself is thought through, it's more related to Calvin. I think at least one thing we can talk about all together, watershed centric, but and then that speaker should be speaking directly to that, at least overview.
Certainly the habitat corridor conversation is an easy one.
So are you thinking like wildlife corridor? And who did
Certainly,
that?
It's a
Again, Silka?
watershed issue.
He's free.
Yeah. Sorry. You were saying something and then
yes.
I started speaking.
No, I was just saying it's a watershed issue.
Right.
Who is free? Did you say?
Jens.
Jens Silka is free.
Yeah.
And Vermont.
Jens Silka, he works for Vermont Fish and
Oh,
Wildlife.
yeah.
Vermont Fish and Wildlife.
It's always great. Yeah. Great speaker.
But choosing that somebody wants to talk about the issue that we want to focus on. I mean, like 2026 is the year of what? Or should we make it the year of something? I mean, are we that coordinated and focused that we can do that? It's a great question.
We obviously have the invasive, but we're coordinated and working significantly as conservation commissions on this. So
And restoration.
in restoration. So that is an obvious place to build out of our strength, rather than picking something new, which we're not developing out of whole cloth, but you're really constructing a campaign or an initiative. So that would be an easier place to start, but I don't know if too much ground has been covered to make that a attractive element for folks because they've heard a lot about it. So does it? I don't push forward on the ideas of like it's got to be shiny, but I do think there's an element of like what if there is an initiative and there's a concept behind it for 2026. And it's something we've already been doing, and it looks like we're repackaging, and we may not get a lot of participation. And that would be my fear.
What about jointly working to basically complete the area report? So we have a watershed level of understanding, story to tell, and then have that become the basis for some serious kind of public education. But I think that would galvanize, Waitsfield and Facein to say, okay, what do we need to do to get up to the level of fidelity and information so we have a really good watershed kind of picture of that? And then I could see some education based on that.
Are you a shareholder, Carol?
No.
No, he don't, no kidding.
I was liking the 50-50 thing. And the reason was it was big and it was setting a goal that we many of us won't be here when that happens, but we're setting a goal where it should go.
Yeah.
And we can talk about 30-30 for the valley, not talk about just Warren, because it's the state 30-30 goal. So what is the Mad River Valley going to do about its 30-30 requirement? And the value of talking about it is it brings the skeptics to the table, because there's a lot of people that think, oh, that's just hoopla, that's some noise, rather than understanding the real crisis. And it does go directly towards George's issue about the crisis at the biological level. And it might be a big enough issue. It's a big umbrella issue. It goes on for years. I do think that what we're doing on habitat and corridors has gotten to the point where it's granular enough. If you're not willing to get granular, you won't understand what we're talking about. We will have to do the educational part at some point, but the 50-by-50 or 30-by-30, maybe we set a 30-by-30 because it's coming up close to what we got. And really try to get those people that are not supportive to come and talk to us about why they don't believe it's a good idea.
Do we have information about
Not even know.
30% land conserved in the watershed?
What about coordinating conservation or?
My point is that way, we're not looking at Waitsfield
Right.
and their 30%.
It's
So
about,
if we really look at 5 towns together,
right.
I just think it's a easier thrust for everybody.
So do we want to look at the watershed or do we want to look at the 5 towns?
Let's look at the watershed.
I think it's
Watershed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could we do something like coordinating corridors within the watershed? Helping people be aware of where the corridors are, what they can do as individual landowners to help coordinate and get on board, so maybe there's an education component, but look, you can be doing something. You can be helping
I think
yourself.
that's going to come.
That's in
I
the
think
future.
Before you can really get to that, you got to really have a good definition.
Okay.
So I've gone in certain places where around our house, I said, here's a corridor that we've all the houses on and we've destroyed, so we need a new one. So let's replant this field over here. And everybody says, yeah, that's a good idea. So we're now letting the forest grow back into a field specifically to create the corridor that we consumed. And we could do that because we had the data and we had the people there.
This is landowners along one road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one, not even the road, it was really through the field. We need to have, this corridor's got to get back in place. That's sort of what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that until we get better definition, you can't have as robust a conversation.
Okay.
But it's one thing you have to do. It was relatively easy for me to have that conversation with the people. Everybody said, oh yeah, there was a little pushback and nuanced. I want to see this and whatever. But we got it. And it makes a difference. The average corridor, a wildlife corridor only has to be like 30 feet wide for most of the animals to get across a stretch of land.
Including bobcat.
So, so one of the things we're doing, there's places on our map where we go like, okay, we need to have a corridor here. And we're like, okay, there's a fence row, talk to the farmer and get everybody to leave that mowing of that fence row closed. It'll grow back and then there'll be a corridor there that doesn't exist now.
I think we're approaching consensus that 30 by 30 is a good way to think about it.
Well,
I'm on it.
so
That's,
that's
and to Brian's point about what made CRB successful was, you know, a hub. I'm so grateful, Hito, that you.
Stepping up.
You know, my wife told me to put your, look,
So that's a yes.
I think
I didn't hear you.
Well, you know, I think this has been a great discussion, and I knew it was fine. Like we say, 8 o'clock. It's past 8 o'clock. We can stay here all night long and continue the discussion. But at the end of the day, so it's 30-30 to go for next year, guys. So we all focus with that. Perfect.
Say 50 by 50.
Well, both.
You,
We have both goals.
You have to start
But
somewhere.
30 by
Let's
30,
make it
30 is coming
It's-
soon.
You can taste it. We're close.
So and then that's what the idea. So we group it a year from now, figure out where we are, what the things we need to do.
So,
We don't have.
I would say it a little differently. I would say if that is sort of the vision, then the biodiversity presentations that we do this year, that we all jointly pay for, supports that 30 by 30. And that because Kate has the data, and that it needs to be then a rollout of either events or media presentations or something to create an awareness in the valley about that we have this challenge in front of us and here's the scope of the challenge. And there's a coordinated activity in that vein, so that at the end of the next year, everybody in the valley will have heard of 30 by 30. And they'll know what it means to them.
Great.
So so a little group of us there's a little subgroup ought to get together and say, okay, this is how we'll do it. These are the key elements that have to happen for that goal to be achieved. And maybe it's not a 1 year, maybe it's a 2 year program, but that would be how I could see it coming together, really coming together.
Well, it's a 4-year program. You got 4 years.
Okay, 4 year program.
So Kate, who would be the best speaker on 30 by 30 for the watershed in the valley?
Tramer.
Well, officially, VHCB and ANR are like leading the 30 by 30 effort. And, I mean, Trey has to really get the conservation plan done by next June, like, he can't really be focused on local stuff. I'll think about that.
So I just want to, I know, everybody can go on here. I'm just looking at the clock. I gotta walk my dog at home, so this is what my wife
wants to go.
No, this is a very important point. I think what you just suggested, Guido, we need to basically, each commission needs to delegate a couple people. So we all need to get together, so we don't have to wait a year from now and figure out what to do. So, which means some of the lucky lads is going to be able to see each other more often to figure out how we can work right, so we can go back to our commission and figure out this is our vision and this is what we think we should move forward.
So 2 members from each conservation commission. Kate is one of ours.
Let's have a goal of getting something in the Valley Reporter in January that basically just says, you've heard, or hopefully you've heard of our state's goal of 30 by 30 and 50 by 50. Here's what it is in the valley, and here's what we need to do to get there. Donate a conservation easement, sell your land, let's create a new temp forest, let's expand our temp forest, blah, 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 blah. Like, that's a goal, January.
Okay.
You already wrote the article, so which is perfect. So this is where we're well.
No, I need your help though. 2 kids, both like 2 dogs to walk.
Okay, we nominate Brian.
Brett, that's your email.
Hey, now, and most importantly, thanks to George.
Well, thanks for Wakefield for having us here.
Perfect. I do appreciate everybody your time today. It's been great.
Wait, we need someone from Waitsfield though.
No,
Come on, guys. No, you can do it.
Kurt
Who's
and
doing it?
Phil,
Kurt, Bruna, who's on it?
Kurt and Phil will do
Let
it.
us talk to the right side.
Language here tonight, so. Yeah.
So we just want to make sure that we'll do that. But anyway, thank you very much for everybody being here today.
Nice job.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
nice
you.
job.
It's an honor to have this meeting here.
Thanks.
Do you want these tables moved? Yeah.
Do you want them back the way they were?
What's
Yeah.
that?
Do you want the
Tables?
tables back the way we found them?
Yeah, that would be terrific.
Okay, there we go.